So in this video, we're going to take a look at all points that are equidistant from another point, and that's going to end up giving us some equation of what we call a circle. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. When you work through a problem like this, you need to be careful with your notation. You need to be careful with what you're calling different variables. You need to stay consistent. So this says, this example is to find an equation describing the set of all points P, which we're labeling as A and B, okay, which are equidistant from Q, which is another point at 2, 3. So let's go ahead and draw out a picture of what that looks like. Okay, so 2 up 3. Okay, now we need all the points, we'll call them AB, okay, which are equidistant, the same distance from 2, 3. So for example, let's say this is our point, this is a point P, and we'll call it A1, B1, okay? So it's got some certain distance from the point 2, 3. Now, if we take this distance right here, okay, and we just expand it maybe a little bit over, okay, we've also got another point, we'll call this PA2, B2, that is equidistant. So now it depends on what you call your axes. Okay, so let's call this X, and let's call this Y. We could have just as easily called this A and this B, right? So if we call this X and Y, now we're going to be dealing with X's and Y's in here. Okay, so an arbitrary point, another point, I should call this like P1 and P2. So maybe I've got some other arbitrary point such that it has an X and a Y. We don't know what its X value is, we don't know what its Y value is. But just in general, it has some X value and it has some Y value. But all of these points, in fact, there's a whole set of them that are equidistant from 2, 3. Well, we've got a circle. And so the distance formula says that if we take the distance, this distance out, which we usually call the radius, right, of the circle. So the distance out should be equal to the difference in the x values. The difference in the x values is x1 minus 2. That's the difference in the x values, right? Between this guy right here and this guy right here, plus the difference in the y values. Well, that's y2 minus 3. And so that's equal to d. So how we usually write this is the following. We usually say that d squared is equal to this, and instead of saying d, we usually use an r because it's a radius, so we'll say r squared is equal to x. Okay, now but this x1 and this y1 could be any x1 or x2 or whatever it is on this, so we'll just call it x because it's some x value. So x minus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared.